Imagine a world where the sky is orange, where the oceans aren't blue but rust red, tinged with iron that hasn't yet learned to sink, where the air itself would kill you in seconds, not because it's poisonous in the traditional sense, but because there's no oxygen, none. And in this suffocating primordial soup, life didn't just survive, it thrived. It built structures. It engineered the entire planet. Welcome to Earth 3.5 billion years ago. A place so alien that if you could somehow travel back in time, you'd think you'd landed on Mars. And the architects of this world? They weren't dinosaurs or megafauna. They were invisible. Microscopic organisms so small that millions could fit on the head of a pin. Yet, these tiny creatures accomplished something no other life form has ever matched. They transformed an entire planet's atmosphere, created continents of stone, and set the stage for everything that came after, including you. This is the story of Earth's first monsters, the microbes that built mountains. To understand just how alien early Earth was, you need to reset everything you know about our planet. Picture this. 4 billion years ago, Earth had just finished being bombarded by asteroids the size of cities. The surface was molten rock cooling into a hostile crust. Volcanoes erupted constantly, spewing gases into an atmosphere thick with methane, ammonia, and hydrogen sulfide. The smell alone would have been apocalyptic, like rotten eggs mixed with industrial chemicals. But here's where it gets interesting. Somewhere in this hellscape, in shallow pools of water heated by volcanic vents, or perhaps in cracks deep within the ocean floor, chemistry became biology. The first cells appeared. Not complex, not even close. Just simple membranes containing genetic material and a desperate hunger for energy. These weren't the microbes that would change the world. Not yet. These were the pioneers, the survivors, organisms called archaea and bacteria that learned to extract energy from their toxic environment. Some consumed hydrogen. Others metabolized sulfur compounds. They were the ultimate extremophiles, thriving in conditions that would sterilize a modern hospital. And then, around 3.5 billion years ago, one group of bacteria stumbled upon an evolutionary jackpot. They discovered photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis sounds mundane. Plants do it. Algae do it. Your high school biology class covered it in a chapter you probably slept through. But when cyanobacteria, these ancient blue-green microbes, first began using sunlight to split water molecules and produce energy, they accidentally created the most toxic waste product in Earth's history: oxygen. Think about that for a moment. Oxygen, the gas you are breathing right now, the molecule that powers your cells and keeps you alive, was originally pollution. Deadly pollution. For the anaerobic organisms that dominated early Earth, organisms that had evolved for billions of years in an oxygen-free world, this new gas was a catastrophe. Oxygen is a ravenous chemical. It binds to everything, tears molecules apart, and causes what we now call oxidation. Rust, in other words. It rusted the world. But the cyanobacteria didn't care. They kept multiplying. And as they did, they began building structures that would outlast empires. These structures are called stromatolites, and they're among the most extraordinary things in the history of life. From a distance, stromatolites look like rocks. Boring, dome-shaped rocks stacked in shallow water. But zoom in, and you're looking at a biological city. A layered metropolis built by trillions of microbes working together across thousands of years. Here's how they work. Cyanobacteria form sticky mats on the seafloor, trapping sediment and minerals as they grow. They photosynthesize, die, and are replaced by new layers of bacteria above them. Each layer gets calcified, turning to stone. Over centuries, these layers stack up, creating domes and pillars that can reach several meters high. The cyanobacteria essentially built their own skyscrapers, layer by microscopic layer. And these weren't isolated structures. During the Archean and Proterozoic eons, stromatolites carpeted the shallow seas of Earth. Vast reefs of them stretched across entire coastlines, dominating the landscape like ancient forests. They were the first visible ecosystems on the planet, the first evidence that life could fundamentally reshape geology. You can still see living stromatolites today in a few rare places like Shark Bay in Western Australia. But 3 billion years ago, they were everywhere. They were the world. But the true impact of these microbes wasn't just architectural. It was atmospheric. As cyanobacteria spread across Earth's oceans, pumping out oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis, the gas began accumulating. At first, it didn't build up in the atmosphere because there were too many sinks. Oxygen reacted with iron dissolved in the oceans, causing massive precipitation events. Iron oxide, rust, settled to the ocean floor in thick layers. Today, we mine these layers as banded iron formations, stripes of red and black rock that record the moment oxygen began changing the chemistry of Earth's oceans. These formations are some of the most economically important geological structures on the planet. Nearly all the iron ore we extract for steel, for buildings, for machines, comes from deposits created by ancient cyanobacteria. Your car, your phone, the rebar in every skyscraper all contain atoms that were processed by microbes billions of years ago. Let that sink in. The infrastructure of human civilization is built on bacterial waste. Eventually, around 2.4 billion years ago, the iron ran out. The oceans were saturated. There was nothing left to absorb the oxygen. And so, it began to accumulate in the atmosphere. This event is called the Great Oxidation Event, and it was the most significant environmental catastrophe in Earth's history. For the anaerobic organisms that still dominated most ecosystems, this was an extinction event. Oxygen scoured the surface world, killing off countless species that couldn't adapt. It was a mass die-off caused not by an asteroid or a volcano, but by pollution from other living things. Life, for the first time, had poisoned itself. But from this catastrophe came opportunity. Oxygen, despite its toxicity, is an incredibly efficient energy source. Organisms that could harness it gained a massive advantage. Aerobic respiration, the process your cells use right now to turn sugar and oxygen into energy, is about 15 times more efficient than anaerobic metabolism. It's like upgrading from a candle to a nuclear reactor. This new energy budget allowed cells to become more complex. It enabled the evolution of eukaryotes, cells with nuclei and specialized internal structures. It eventually made multicellular life possible. Without the oxygen catastrophe engineered by cyanobacteria, there would be no animals, no plants, no fungi, no you. The legacy of these ancient microbes is written into the bones of the planet itself. The stromatolites they built still exist as fossils in Western Australia, South Africa, and Canada. Some of these structures are 3.5 billion years old, making them the oldest confirmed evidence of life on Earth. When paleontologists study these fossils, they're looking at the architectural signatures of organisms that fundamentally altered the course of planetary evolution. And it's not just Earth. When astrobiologists search for life on Mars or the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, stromatolites are high on the list of biosignatures they're looking for. Because if life exists elsewhere in the solar system, it's probably microbial. And if it's microbial and photosynthetic, it might build structures just like cyanobacteria did here. The possibility that somewhere, on some distant world, alien stromatolites are slowly stacking into reefs is one of the most tantalizing prospects in modern science. But back on Earth, the story of cyanobacteria continues. They didn't go extinct after oxygenating the planet. They adapted. They diversified. Today, cyanobacteria still exist in almost every aquatic environment on Earth, from tropical reefs to Antarctic lakes. They're still photosynthesizing, still producing oxygen, still building stromatolites in those rare corners where conditions allow. And here's something remarkable. Cyanobacteria are responsible for producing between 20 and 30% of the oxygen you breathe every day. Not forests, not rainforests, microbes, invisible organisms floating in the ocean, descendants of the same lineages that transformed the planet billions of years ago. They're still working, still engineering, still, in their quiet, microscopic way, keeping the world alive. So, the next time you take a breath, remember this. The oxygen filling your lungs wasn't always here. It didn't come from some passive geological process or a fortunate cosmic accident. It came from life. From organisms so small you could never see them with the naked eye, yet so powerful they rebuilt an entire planet's atmosphere. They turned a toxic, alien wasteland into a world where complex life could flourish. They created the rust-red banded iron formations we mine for civilization. They built stone cities in the shallows of ancient seas, structures that still stand billions of years later. They were Earth's first monsters, not because they were dangerous or frightening, but because their power was incomprehensible. They wielded the chemistry of stars, bent geology to their will, and in doing so they created everything that came after, including the very air we breathe, the ground we walk on, and the world we call home.